Alright, welcome ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters to the New Black Media. Today's broadcast is about how slave owners dictated the language of the Second Amendment. Mass shootings in El Paso, Texas and Dayton, Ohio have highlighted once again the importance of the Supreme Court's 2008 landmark decision, District of Columbia versus Heller, declaring that the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to possess a gun. Writing for the court's conservative majority, Justice Antonin Scalia held that a Washington, D.C. gun law banning handguns and requiring that even lawful guns in a home be kept non-functional violated the Second Amendment. That part of Scalia's decision is clear, but what his decision fails to acknowledge, as criticism of it has pointed out, is how the Second Amendment, in providing for slave control, played a crucial role in the willingness of the influential state of Virginia to ratify the Constitution. On its surface, the Second Amendment seems straightforward. In 27 words, it declares, quote, "A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed," unquote. But interpretive problems arise when we try to figure out the relationship the two parts of the Second Amendment have with each other. In his ruling, Scalia made a point of dividing the amendment into separate halves. He contended that while the militia or prefatory clause introduced the Second Amendment, it did not curtail the second or operative clause's assertion of the right to bear arms. Quote, "The former does not limit the latter grammatically, but rather announces a purpose." Scalia observed on his way to concluding, quote, "Putting all of these textual elements together, we find that they guarantee the individual right to possess and carry weapons in case of confrontation," unquote. By contrast, James Madison, the author of the Second Amendment, wrote his amendment with his eye firmly fixed on practical politics. He introduced the amendment during Virginia's debate over the ratification of the Constitution because Virginia Governor Patrick Henry saw danger lurking in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, which gives Congress the power to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining militias. Henry feared that without checks upon it, Congress could undermine the ability of militias in Virginia and elsewhere in the South to suppress slave uprisings and pursue runaway slaves. The militia issue was important enough for Henry to see it as grounds for opposing ratification of the Constitution. The positive power Congress had over militias, Henry reasoned, could easily be turned into restrictive power. Quote, "By this, sir, you see that their control over our best defense is unlimited," unquote, Henry warned his fellow Virginians. It took Madison 2 drafts to get the Second Amendment into the single sentence it is today. His careful wording was deliberate. In drawing a connection between militias and the right to bear arms rather than simply defending the right to bear arms, Madison, a slaveholder himself, was speaking to his state's ruling powers. Only the white men in the Virginia militia had the right to bear arms. Free African Americans could join the militia, but they were limited to being drummers or buglers. The case for seeing the Second Amendment as part of the early debate over slave control and militias has been made with great persuasiveness by former Pennsylvania Assistant Attorney General Anthony F. Bacodia in both the 2019 Pennsylvania Bar Quarterly and Transpartisan Review, and by law professor Carl T. Bogus in the University of California, Davis Law Review of 1998. And in addition to such books as Professor Sally Haddon's 2003 study, Slave Patrols, Law and Violence in Virginia and the Carolinas, and Brennan's Center for Justice President, Michael Waltman's 2014 history, The Second Amendment, a biography. There are also strong op-eds on this subject. But the link between slave control and the Second Amendment has not become a feature of today's debate over gun control. That is good news for Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and President Donald Trump. They should not, though, breathe easy. In the end, Justice Scalia never saw his majority opinion in the District of Columbia versus Heller eliminating the government's ability to regulate guns. Quote, although we do not undertake an exhaustive historical analysis today of the full scope of the Second Amendment, Scalia cautioned, quote, nothing in our opinion should be taken to cast doubt on long-standing prohibitions on the possession of firearms by felons and the mentally ill, or laws forbidding the carrying of firearms in sensitive places such as schools or government buildings, or laws imposing conditions and qualifications on the commercial sale of arms, unquote. Family, as I read that to you, it should have made your blood boil to hear such crap. We're listening to a set of white rules where these are white people and they are saying these things because they are white and they say so, not because they wanted to practice the actual meaning of the words that were presented in the Constitution. Notice how they always want to ratify, amend, or change the rules as they go along, and it's always to fit their bitter end. I will say this. It shouldn't matter to foundational black Americans, black people in particular, no matter where we are, and that goes for the brown people and other colored people as well on this planet. If you don't have your eyes wide open to what's going down and what kind of attack is being waged on your skin complexion, no matter what shade you are, it might not be happening to you directly, but it shall come knocking at your door if it hasn't already. If you're not paying attention, these laws are for all Americans. White Americans are trying to change it to where it only fits them to be able to carry guns, be able to possess guns. They use this clause of mentally ill, and I wager to say that if that's the case, the majority of white Americans should not own or carry or possess guns today. We are seeing that unfold before our very eyes. So, I say to you that while you use this article, white media, and while you try to use this argument and this talking point as something significant it is not. The foundational Black Americans today, we have our eyes and our minds operating on full power. You can no longer drug us to death and fool us with your shenanigans. God has blessed us with a mind of our own to think for ourselves. So with that, I offer to you, foundational Black Americans, that you practice your Second Amendment right, regardless of whether they use the language as their slave patrol tactics or whatnot. It doesn't matter. In this day and age, there are no rules in war. If you think because you're a felon and you shouldn't own a firearm because they say so, while they're out here killing you at will because they want to, then you lose by being the dummy, not doing your best to protect your godly life, your God-given life, the one that God said He made in His image, and you take for granted. You act like you don't know these things, and you act passively and docile. That's not going to work. Wise up. Wake up. If you're going to use the word woke, this is the new Black Media. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.